There's a special kind of fear that comes from being truly alone, when every sound might not just be the wind, and every shadow feels like it knows you're there. Welcome to Night Encounters. Tonight, you'll hear 3 allegedly true stories from hikers who set out to find peace in the wilderness and never came back the same. These stories are based on real disappearances, strange encounters, and chilling recoveries told by those who claim to have survived. So turn down the lights. Story 1: The Path That Wasn't There, by Ross. This happened in the late summer of 2018, somewhere near the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina. I'd been obsessed with hiking for years. It was my escape, a way to clear my head, get away from the noise of work, my phone, everything. That weekend, I left early Friday morning to hike a section of trail I'd never done before. It wasn't technically remote, but people said it was quiet, peaceful, and I liked that. My plan was simple: hike about 8 miles in, camp overnight near the ridge, and head back out the following afternoon. I brought my tent, dehydrated meals, plenty of water, and even a small notebook where I'd been recording every hike I'd done that year. The weather was perfect, warm but breezy, with those streaks of sunlight that cut between the trees like gold threads. Everything felt so normal. I remember thinking it might be one of my favorite trips yet. By late afternoon, I reached a clearing to set up camp. It was quiet, except for the cicadas and the low hum of wind moving through the trees. I cooked a quick meal, read a few pages from my book, and called it a night. Sometime around 1 a.m., I woke up. At first, I thought maybe it was an animal, a deer or a raccoon, moving through the brush nearby. But then I realized it didn't sound like that. It was heavier, slow, deliberate steps, moving just outside the reach of my flashlight. I sat there, frozen, holding my breath. For a minute, it stopped completely. I almost convinced myself I'd just imagined it. That familiar trick your brain plays when all you can hear is your own pulse. Then came a voice. It was faint, just a few words, but it was definitely human. "Hey, you out here?" I could feel my chest tighten. It sounded like a man, maybe mid-30s, too calm, too casual. I called back, or tried to, but the sound that came out was barely a whisper. When I finally mustered the courage to unzip my tent, there was nothing, just silence, thick and heavy, pressing against my ears. The next morning, I packed early. I didn't want to hang around long enough to find out who that was. But when I went to backtrack the way I came, the trail looked different. The markers I remembered, the yellow paint on the trees, the small carved arrow on a fallen log, they weren't there anymore. I walked for about 20 minutes before realizing I wasn't on the same path at all. The trees felt denser, darker. There was something wrong with the sound. No birds, no wind, not even insects. My stomach was in knots, but I kept moving. Surely, if I just headed downhill, I'd hit a recognizable route. Then I saw something odd, a piece of red cloth tied around a branch. It looked almost new, like someone had put it there recently. When I got closer, I realized it wasn't fabric from a shirt or scarf. It was a strip of nylon, the kind they use for tent straps. And then I noticed there were more, tied every few meters, leading deeper into the woods. For a minute, I just stood there, debating what to do. My gut told me to turn around, but the logic part of my brain convinced me maybe it was a trailblaze from someone else who'd lost their way. So I followed them. The trail led me into a small clearing. There was a fire pit, old cold ashes in the center, with makeshift seats made from stones. Beside them, a backpack. It wasn't mine. It looked weathered, torn down one side, covered with dirt. I knelt, carefully unzipped it. Inside were dehydrated meals, the same brand I used, and a folded map. The paper was brittle, like it had been out there for years. In the corner of the map, someone had drawn a thick X knot on a known trail, just deep inside the blank part of the forest. Something behind me moved. Not a branch, not an animal. Footsteps. Fast, too. When I turned, I caught a glimpse of someone, a man, just for a second, standing at the edge of the trees. He was tall, wearing dark clothes, face shadowed under a hood. He didn't say a word. He just took one step forward, then another. I ran. I don't remember half of that sprint. It was all instinct, crashing through the underbrush, tripping, scraping my arms. My lungs felt like fire. But somehow, after what felt like forever, I stumbled back onto a marked section of the trail. I just knew it was. The signs were there again, painted on the trees. By the time I reached the trailhead, it was near dusk. I was shaking so hard I couldn't hold my keys. I drove straight to a ranger station a few miles down the road and reported what I'd seen. They listened, but I could tell they were skeptical. A few days later, I got a call. They'd checked the area and found a campsite, the one I'd described. But there was no backpack, no nylon cloths, and no footprints. The ranger told me, gently, that hikers sometimes panic and misremember their paths. That if someone had been out there, they were long gone. But I know what I saw. I still hike, but I stay on popular trails now. I don't go alone anymore. And sometimes, when I'm deep enough in the woods that my phone loses signal, I swear I hear that same voice again, soft, calm, just beyond the trees. Hey, you out here? Story 2, The Vanishing Trail Group, by Caldwell. This happened back in the summer of 2014 when I was 28. I'd been invited to join a group hike on the Pacific Crest Trail, not the whole thing, just a 4-day stretch with 5 other people. We were all friends of friends, a mix of coworkers and their partners, everyone eager for a bit of adventure. I remember feeling excited but a little out of place. Most of them hiked regularly, while I'd done mostly weekend day trips, nothing so remote. We met the night before at a cheap motel, sharing jokes and snacks, nervously packing our gear. On the first day, everything felt easy. Early morning sun, trail maps in hand, that steady rhythm of boots on dry soil. The forest was wide and open, pine needles crunching beneath our feet. We talked for hours, mostly about work, relationships, stupid things people do online. Around midday, we stopped at a stream to refill our bottles, laughing while one guy tried to skip stones and failed spectacularly. Nothing felt off. If anything, I started to think I might want to do hikes like this more often. That night, as dusk settled in with an odd chill, something changed. We'd set camp just off the trail, forming a rough circle with our tents. The woods felt quieter than before. Not silent exactly, but almost like the trees were muffling every sound. After dinner, we sat around a tiny campfire, swapping ghost stories. It was supposed to be funny, but partway through, Kayla, one of the group, stopped talking and stared behind me. I thought maybe she'd seen an animal, but when I turned, I only saw shadows and a flicker of movement. Maybe it was just a branch in the wind. Kayla insisted she saw someone watching, but nobody else could confirm it. That feeling crept in. My stomach just sank, the way it does before a job interview, but sharper. Everyone dismissed it, laughed it off, but all night, every sound outside the tent made me sit straight up, heart pounding. In the morning, the group was different, less chatty. Kayla was quiet, distracted, saying she couldn't sleep because she kept hearing voices, not close, just faint, drifting somewhere further in the woods. On the second day, we lost the main trail after a washed-out bridge forced us to detour. We found what looked like an animal track and decided to follow it, thinking it would reconnect with the PCT after a few miles. That's when things got weird. First, we started finding odd debris, a discarded hiking pole, some plastic food wrappers, even a muddy baseball cap nobody recognized. They were scattered along the path, but none seemed fresh. Alex, one of the more experienced hikers, kept saying we'd circle back to the real trail soon. But hours passed, and we only got deeper into dense woods. At one point, we came across what looked like old collapsed tents, faded material tangled in roots. My gut screamed that something was wrong. The air felt heavy, like before a thunderstorm. Kayla said she saw a figure off the trail again, just a silhouette. We all tried to reassure her, but she was pale and shaking. That night, our GPS devices glitched and lost signal. Phones were dead. Nothing felt right. The sounds, the smells, even the light seemed off. Very early the next morning, I woke to someone shouting. Alex wasn't in his tent. In a panic, we searched the area, calling his name. After half an hour, we found a torn piece of his shirt snagged on a tree branch, but no footprints, no sign of him anywhere. Kayla started crying. I couldn't shake the thought. Something was out there, watching us, maybe following. My stomach felt like it was filled with rocks, every instinct yelling to get out. Just as the sun crept up, we saw movement, 2 people, shapes just beyond the fog between the trees. At first, I thought it was Alex with someone else, but when we called out, they didn't answer. The shapes moved together, then vanished behind thick undergrowth. The rest of us debated whether to chase after them or leave. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like gunshots in my chest. We decided to stick together and head back the way we came, retracing every step, desperate to get to any trail marker. I don't remember the hike out. Every snap of a twig made me jump. Every rustle felt like it was someone, or something, closing in. Kayla and I kept glancing over our shoulders, fighting the urge to run. It took us half a day, but somehow we stumbled back onto a fire road. I barely recognized where we were. A park ranger found us, dehydrated and borderline delirious. We reported Alex missing. Search teams combed the woods for weeks, but nothing, no body, no backpack, no sign of him, other than that scrap of shirt. The group never hiked together again. Some people blamed panic. Others said it was just bad luck. But I can't forget the feeling from that last night, as if something ancient, something patient, had watched us, waited, and chose not to let us all return. I still see Kayla sometimes, but we don't talk about the hike. Sometimes, in crowded places, I'll notice someone catching my eye, lingering just a moment longer than feels natural, and my stomach tightens all over again. Like maybe something followed us out of those woods and is just waiting for the right moment. Story 3: The Night at Devil's Hollow. By heart, I was never much of a thrill seeker, but Devil's Hollow had a reputation, and I guess curiosity got the better of me. It was October 2022, and after weeks of reading online about the haunted valley, I decided to spend a weekend hiking and camping there, alone. The place was only an hour from my small apartment. Locals said it wasn't haunted, just off. People claimed compasses spun, and hikers lost their way for hours. I figured it was all talk, the kind of spooky folklore that gets repeated every fall. Driving up, the leaves were just starting to change, a quiet riot of orange and crimson. The dirt path into the hollow was narrow, lined with fading wooden signs I could barely make out. It felt peaceful enough, if a little too quiet. After a gentle hike down the valley slopes, I picked a spot near a shallow creek and set up camp. It was colder than I expected, and the air had this strange heaviness to it, like fog without the moisture. I remember thinking, I'll be fine. I just won't go too far off the path. I cooked dinner, listened to some music on my phone, and read by flashlight until I was too tired to focus. Sometime after midnight, I woke up feeling watched. I convinced myself it was nothing, but the more I listened, the more I realized I couldn't hear insects or even the water flowing. It was completely, utterly silent. Then, footsteps. Distinct, slow, heavy, crunching leaves with every deliberate move. I held my breath, clutching the flashlight. In the dim beam, I saw what looked like a person, standing just beyond a line of dead trees. I didn't move or speak. I just stared. Whoever it was, they didn't come closer, didn't call out, just stood, watching. I felt my heart pounding so hard it hurt. My stomach turned cold. After what felt like forever, they moved away, vanishing into the trees. I told myself maybe it was another camper, but deep down, I didn't believe that. By dawn, I wanted to leave, but convincing myself I was overreacting, I stayed long enough to make breakfast. When I went to fetch more water from the creek, I found something strange. Fresh footprints leading away from my sight. But these weren't from hiking boots. They were barefoot, smaller, like a child's. And there were two sets. A chill ran down my arms. I tried to dismiss it, but deep inside, I knew I wasn't alone. Later, I tried to get a signal to send an update to a friend. My phone was dead, battery drained, although it had been nearly full all night. I packed up and tried to retrace my path out of the valley. But everywhere I turned, the landmarks looked different. The creek curved wrong. The downed tree had vanished. Every now and then, I'd see a flicker between the trees, watching, moving, never close enough to make out a face. At one point, I found a half-buried backpack. It wasn't mine. It was torn, old, with a faded crest sewn on the front. Inside was a child's picture book, the pages yellowed and brittle, with strange marks on some of the illustrations. It smelled musty and sweet, like rotten fruit. I felt dread, like something was closing in, slowly, silently. By late afternoon, lost and desperate, I reached the valley's far side, a stretch of thick, tangled brush with standing stones that looked ancient. That's when I heard voices, soft, whispering, rising and falling in a rhythm that felt almost ritualistic. I froze. The haze around me deepened, like the air itself was thickening. Through gaps in the stone, I saw shapes, 6, maybe 7, circling, almost gliding. I swear one glanced in my direction, pale face framed by tangled hair. And then, they vanished. Just gone, like smoke. The silence was crushing. My heart thudded painfully, my head spinning. I ran. Branches tore at my clothes, the terrain pitched and confusing. I just kept running, driven by an animal panic, every breath scraping my throat. It was nearly dark when I burst out onto a gravel road, not the one I'd arrived on. There was no sign, no marker, Nothing but the dull roar of distant cars barely audibles beyond the hills. I flagged down a passing pickup, nearly delirious with exhaustion. The driver, a local, listened as I tried to explain what happened. He gave me water, let me sit in the cab while he drove me to town. When I mentioned Devil's Hollow, he glanced away and said nothing for the rest of the trip. Days later, when I recovered enough to revisit the area in daylight with friends, everything felt changed. The creek was running, the trees looked familiar, and there was no sign of footprints or stones, no backpacks, no voices, nothing. But even now, I'll dream about that valley sometimes. The faces in the haze, the whispering voices, and the sensation of being watched. I don't hike alone any longer. Whenever I pass near Devil's Hollow, my gut twists with a memory that refuses to fade. Whatever happened out there that night is left to speculation, and I honestly prefer not to know what would have happened if I hadn't found my way out. The wilderness is beautiful, but there are places where it remembers every secret, and not all of them want to be found. If you have a true original story you'd like to submit to be featured in a future Night Encounters video, please email us at nightencountersstories@gmail.com. Stay safe. And remember, sometimes getting lost isn't a mistake. It's a warning.